Hello, this is CA Omkar Gadgir, and today we are here to discuss the Customs Valuation Rule 2007. Now, the valuation mechanisms under customs, if we see, then it is first of all going to be based on the transaction value, as we already know that the same had existed in excise. The term transaction value, the same is going to be over here also, that is the transaction value, which means the price which is actually paid or payable by the importer to the exporter for delivery of the goods at the time and place of importation. Now, if you remember, in under central excise, the definition of transaction value was the price actually paid or payable by the buyer to the seller for delivery at the time and place of removal. Over here, it is at the time and place of importation. So it is more or less the definition pretty similar to that. Now, in customs, what happens is, again, there are four conditions based on which we can actually say that whether the assessable value will be accepted as a transaction value or not. The four conditions goes like, first, there must be a sale by way of imports. That is, when you are actually importing the goods, if it is in the course of imports as well as purchase from the perspective of the importer, that is sale from the perspective of exporter, then we say that this condition gets fulfilled. That means, however, if there is a situation whereby I am importing under a gift deed, I'm importing under any kind of a license or agreements, etc., whereby let's say that sale is actually not taking place, then I'll not be able to accept the value. I mean, my value will not be accepted as per this transaction value method. The next is that their import should be unconditional. That is, there should be no restrictions which are imposed upon the importer as to the use or disposition of goods. Means, for example, let's say that there is some exporter in USA who has kept a person in India as an importer, and he's putting up a condition that you will not be able to utilize the goods at your discretion. However, he'll be directing you how to use, to whom to sell the goods, or to do what with the goods. This is what we say as restrictive or conditional sales. So such things do not exist, otherwise we'll not be able to utilize this transaction value method. Price is of course the whole consideration for sale, the same thing that existed under excise also, that the price should be the only consideration. If any additional consideration is flowing apart from price, then you will be again not be able to using the transaction value method. And the importer and the exporter should not be related person. Now, related persons definition over here in customs is also defined. However, related persons in any case, let's say that they are in interconnected undertakings in terms of they are having a common holding in of shares in each other's company, or maybe there are the decision makers in common, or there is some parent company who is controlling two distinct companies whereby they are associated with each other. And this is how the definition has been given of the related persons under customs as well. However, if in case of related person, if you are still able to prove or establish an evidence that the relations actually did not impact the valuation, then in this case, the value of value as per transaction value should be accepted. Now, if we see the next slide, you can see that how the valuation process actually goes like. The first of all declaration of value is filed by the assessee when he is importing the goods. The value declaration will be submitted under Rule 11. Under Rule 12, the officer has a right to reject the value if, let's say, that the assessing officer or the adjudicating officer is not having a belief that the value declared may be true, or the value declared may contain some of the information which is probably overstated or understated in some or the other manner. He has a right to reject the value that has been furnished by the assessee. If he rejects the value, then the valuation has to proceed sequentially from Rule 4 to Rule 9 of the customs valuation rules. However, if the valuation as submitted by the assessee is accepted, that means it is the transaction value as per Rule 3. And then there are some normal additions to be made under Rule 10, which we'll be discussing a bit later. So far as what we understand is that valuation prima facie starts with the application of value. Then once the value is applied for, the acceptance or rejection criteria will be there. If the value is accepted, then the assessable value is transaction value. However, if the value is rejected, then the value shall be considered by way of the customs valuation rules. Now, if you can see, the valuation proceeds from Rule 4 to Rule 9 in a sequence. Generally, the sequence is in same manner, that is from Rule 4 to Rule 9. Only the thing is that in case of Rule 7 and Rule 8, you have a discretion with the officer's permission that you may interchange the sequential application of the rules. Otherwise, it remains from 4 to 9 in itself. Now, if we directly go to Rule 4, which talks about that identical goods or transaction value of identical goods will be relied upon for determination of value of imported goods. As in, if your value of imported goods is not accepted to be the transaction value, then you will be determining the value as per the valuation of identical goods. Now, identical goods means goods which are same in all respects. Now, when we say in all respects, that means it has more or less the same goods which are appearing to be same. Maybe sometimes minor difference as to the size and shape may be differed, or probably say shape or size may be differed in that case. However, by and large, the goods should be considered as same to each other. They should be having a same level of commercial reputation in the market. Then we can call them as actually identical goods. Identical goods should belong to the same country of exportation from where your goods are being imported, and by the manufactured by the same manufacturer as well who has manufactured over there. But if you don't have those goods by manufactured by the same person, then by a manufacturer other than the exporting manufacturer, but who is belonging to the same country of exportation, that has to be taken. The transaction value, if I'm relying on that of the identical goods, then that identical goods transaction value should already been accepted by the customs in a near transaction that has already taken place in the recent past. So that is what I have to also see, that the valuation is already accepted. Now, identical goods, as you can see an illustration over there, there is one iPhone for us, there is one Samsung Galaxy S4, which are having the reputation same because of the technical inputs which are contained in those products. They are making it by and large same to the market so far as the value is concerned or the price is concerned of the goods. Now, we can also see that they are manufactured by two different persons, and we are right now assuming that they are belonging to the same country of exportation. Now let's say that Samsung was already imported, the value of which is already imported and accepted by the department. So based on the value of same, we'll be determining the value of this iPhone 4S, which is going to be imported now. Of course, any adjustments due to the technicalities or differences can also be made by the officer if it is necessary, that whatever value of, let's say, X rupees of value was there as accepted value of the Galaxy S4, and there is something more that you have offered in this 4S, then that amount can also be added wherever it is necessary. So now if we look at the rule 4, when can we be make it applicable? If you are having identical goods and you are having a transaction value accepted of it, then we can accept the transaction value of identical goods. Now if we move to the next sector, that is assessable value is given as transaction value of similar goods. Now let's say what similar goods actually mean by. Now, similar goods and identical goods has a bit of difference. Identical goods means those which are same in all aspects. Most of their characteristics match. Most of their features also match. Whereas when we talk about the similar goods, then similar goods are having substantially something important to know, that even though they are not same in all respects, in all aspects, they should be having some same characteristics and same components which prepare them, rather which make them essentially perform the same basic functions. Now let's say if we talk about a cell phone that is manufactured by Samsung, let's say that they had imported a Samsung Guru model 1000 and Samsung Guru model 1500 maybe. Now model 1000 was the basic one, it did not have any other facilities other than basic texting or calling, that's all. 1500 model that came in later on was having some additional features to offer. Let's say it has the FM radio system installed in that, is it has a small camera installed in that, that's one. But now what happens is that the essential functions, when we're talking about these facilities given, they are extra. Essential functions of text and call remain same in both the cases. In similar goods also, both these phones are manufactured by a same exporter belonging to the same country of exportation. If however the same is not available, then the same country of exportation should be there, even though the manufacturer may or may not be the same. But then these goods will be having something in common, that is their essential functions. Like in the given case, calling and texting is an essential function which remains same in both the cases, that will continue to remain the same. So in this case, what we'll do is that the value of similar goods will be adopted for the purpose of valuation. And again, wherever necessary, if there is a difference in value due to the difference in any of the factors which are added in terms of cost factors, then that will be considered on the upper or lower side, and the same shall be given an adjustment effect to certain. Now, Rule 6 does not have anything much great to offer. Rule 6 says that if the valuation cannot be done as per Rule 3, 4 or 5, then the valuation should be done as per Rule 7, 8, 9. Now, Rule 7 and Rule 8, as I already told you, that you have an option whether to select first Rule 7 or first Rule 8. That is at the discretion of the importer, but of course you have to explain and inform the same to the officers also. Rule 7 talks about the deductive methodologies. Now this is slightly a unusual kind of a method because it actually helps us to calculate the transaction value of the goods which are already imported. It may be identical or similar goods, but by way of a reverse calculation manner. Now, what is the basis of this rule is that when we actually start valuation under Rule 7, we are assuming a fact that there are certain goods which are identical or similar goods, but we could not have the transaction value of the same. So we determined the transaction value of the same by way of a reverse calculation going from the Indian selling price of those goods up to the transaction value by a backflush method. Now, how we actually do that? See, there's a table given in front of you. We assume that we are having a selling price per unit after importation available. Then we go on reducing the factors such as the profits that you made in India, the further per unit processing cost, the transportation and other charges that you incurred from the port of importation to the factory, and any other taxes and duties that you paid, including the custom duties. And so, by Indian selling price to the price at which the duty was charged, we are arriving at that by way of a reverse calculation. Now, again, why so? Because the direct transaction value was not available of the identical and similar goods. So we tried to arrive at it by reducing certain of the cost factors. Now, practically speaking, if it belongs to the same manufacturer, same importer, then I think this data should be very much fine to be reduced, because it is hardly possible that someone else is going to share a data such as how much profit has been earned in India or how much cost was actually earned in India. That data is slightly secretive enough, so not to be disclosed. So maybe it becomes practically difficult to implement this rule, especially when it is not imported by the same importer or the manufacturer. Now, again, on similar lines where the value is not available as per rule 3, 4, or 5, and the transaction value of identical and similar goods are not available, then you try to arrive at the transaction value of those goods by going in a forward integration manner under rule 8. Now, see, rule 7, what was the issue that in rule 7, we went back to the transaction value by starting from the Indian selling price up to the transaction value. Whereas in rule 8, it is going to be identical or similar goods which are manufactured outside India. I am trying to find out the cost of production of those goods, then the profit margins that they added over there, and the usual cost of freight and insurance that was incurred to get those goods from the country of exportation to country of importation. Now, again, this is a method of calculating right the arriving at the value because the direct data of value was not available. But if you are closely associated with the exporter, or the exporter is, and you are having some of the relation whereby you can actually by way of a great transparency share these details, then it is possible to do so. Otherwise, it again becomes evidently difficult enough to ascertain such detail or minute details about the production cost or profitability or the transportation cost, because that is again one of the most secretive information. So rule 7 and rule 8, we can actually say that maybe it is possible to be using these rules only when you are having a associated exporter or importer and associated manufacturer who is willing to share this data with you. Otherwise, it becomes pretty difficult to use these methods. Of course, when we don't have any other method left, then what valuation actually resorts to is the residual methods of valuation. That is, whatever is consistent with the basic principles of valuation, we'll be doing the value as per that rule. The value will be ascertained by the officer by using some reasonable means. Now, when we all consider these, see, the process started from rule 11, whereby we applied for the value. Rule 11, when we applied for the value, then there was a rule 12 which was saying about acceptance or rejection. If you accept the value, then the transaction value will be as per rule 3, and there are certain additions to be made as per rule 10. If the value is rejected under rule 12, then the value shall be determined by using the valuation rules from proceeding from rule 4 to rule 9. Rule 4 was transaction value of identical goods. Rule 5 was transaction value of similar goods. Rule 6 did not offer anything much to explain. Rule 7 was talking about deductive methodology. So Indian selling price to the transaction value. We go by a reverse calculation method because the direct data is not available. And rule 8 was computed method, means the country of exportation's cost of production, their profit margin, expenses, and we arrive at a value. And rule 9, residual method, that's all. Now, what additions are to be made under rule 10? There are certain additions such as cost factors, means whenever you are determining the value of goods, rule 10 tells you that costs such as commission, except for buying commission. Now, what does this buying commission means? If I've hired, let's say, any person in the USA, that he'll be helping me to locate a seller who will be suiting my needs, then that type of a commission is called as buying commission. But it has got nothing to do with direct particular consignment that is being imported, so that buying commission will not be included in the value. Any other commission that is there, any other expenses that is incurred up to the port of importation, that has to be very much included in the value. Even the amounts are paid in Indian rupees, that does not make a difference. That will certainly be added in the value, so far as that cost relates to anything that is incurred up to the place of importation. So we can also say that beyond the port of importation, any cost is to be incurred, then that will not be included in the value of goods. So let's say freight incurred from the port of importation up to the factory of the importer, that will never form the value of goods. So any cost incurred up to the place of importation, which is paid either in Indian currency or foreign currency, that is a material, that will be included in the value of goods. Commission other than buying commission has to be included in the value of goods. There is a explanation to rule 2 that was inserted, which talks about the ship demurrage charges. Now demurrage charges are of two types: ship demurrage charges and goods demurrage charges, for delayed clearance of goods and for delayed clearance of the ship from the particular area. Ship demurrage charges are includable as per the explanations offered in the rule explanation 2 as to the rule 10 of the Central Excise Valuation Rules. Now the other cost factors are the freight and the transit insurance. Now if we see the freight, that can be by, basically what we can say, that freight can be either it is ascertainable or it is not ascertainable. If the freight is not ascertainable, it has to be taken at 20% of your FOB price. If the freight, however, is ascertainable, then there are two distinct things that we can actually mark out. First one is air. If the freight goods are imported by air, then the freight cannot exceed 20% of the value of goods. However, goods are imported by any other modes of transportation, then the freight has to be taken at actuals, irrespective of any ceiling limits, unlike in the case of the air freights. So if about the freight, what we can say, if the freight is not ascertainable, it has to be taken at 20% of FOB. If the freight is ascertainable, then there are two parts in which we make. One is, if air freight is there, then air freight cannot exceed 20% of FOB. Any other modes of transportation, if it is there, then that freight will be taken at as actuals. Next comes is the transit insurance. The transit insurance, again, we can have two things in that. Whether transit insurance is ascertainable, you have to take it at actuals. Whether transit insurance is not ascertainable, it has to be taken at 1.125% of the FOB. And after adding these, we actually arrive at what we call as the assessable value. While doing the valuation of the valuation under customs, to all these values ascertained, 1% means when we generally start with the FOB price, FOB plus insurance plus freight, we get the CIF value. In the CIF value, we are going to add 1% as statutory landing charges. So thereafter we actually arrive at the assessable value. So this is how the valuation under customs is actually being done. This is the process flow. I'm also providing you the slides, so you can refer to the slides again for a detailed explanation. And customs valuation based on this will be performed. And also what we can say is that so far as the determination of exchange rate is concerned, or so far as determination of the rate of duty is concerned, that depends on the multiple factors, that is date of filing of bill of entry or entry notes, whichever is later in terms of the rate of duty. And in terms of currency exchange, if we see, then the currency exchange is to be the one which is actually existing on the date of filing of the bill of entry for the first time under home consumption. Or when, even if you are sending the goods to the warehouse, the first time when you file the bill of entry, that is the time when, that is the time, or that is the day on which you have to take the currency exchange rate. So with this, we actually complete the revision of valuations or the valuations in a very just manner. For any detailed requirements or any detailed questions, you can definitely call or message me, mail me on my given email IDs. Thank you so much. Again, this is CA Omkar Gadgil signing off. Thank you.